our weekly webinar with the title, Stopping the Crime and Violence in America. A lot of it is centered around gun violence as well. This is not a discussion on gun control, but more gun violence, which also is connected with gun violence in America. And so we're here today. Sorry, someone, hold on just a second. I'm sorry about the interruption. Dr. Jenkins wants to be let in. It's the regular one. Again, just want to invite everyone. Today, we will have Dr. Rouse. Dr. Rouse is the co-chair of ACLC, American Clergy Leadership Conference. He is also a man who has been in the field dealing with different at-risk individuals that are more prone to be contributors, if you will, to the crime and violence. And I think that what we are going to achieve during this time is looking at crime in America from different angles. Of course, guns is what is used, a tool, but there are different root causes that we want to be able to investigate and to learn and to discover. Because when you discover those root causes, they become a very powerful prevention discussion. And I think a lot of it is during this time in the 4 weeks, this webinar, we'll be looking at prevention, looking at also solutions, and also looking at the symptoms. And so today, we have Dr. Luan Rouse, and we have Dr. Jenkins, who has done some research on statistics, how many people are killed by guns, homicides, suicides, even legal, if you will, deaths by different police officers. And there's a whole variety of violence that America is experiencing. And so we want to, again, be a catalyst, not only to show you or to display the symptoms, but to really look at the root cause. And so without any further ado, we would like to have our illustrious good friend, very powerful pastor in his own right, and also a man who has dealt with mental health and counseling for those who are at risk. And without any further ado, let us welcome Dr. Luan Rouse. Welcome, Dr. Rouse.
Thank you, Dr. Oliver. It's always good to be with you, and wherever occasion we have an opportunity to be together. You're such a gentleman, such an outstanding American, and a committed child of God, and well informed in the teachings and guidance of what I call the current now, the situation of the completion of God's will in history in joining Father and Mother Moon on this course that we are on. And thank you for inviting me today. I want to give gratitude to Dr. Michael Jenkins as well, and give a statement to everyone who's on this call, a statement of gratitude from Marie and I for your consistency in working for the building of the kingdom of God on earth, especially as you unite in creating the holy community as asked by Dr. Hatahan Moon, the mother of peace, the one that God has chosen and risen at this time in the likeness of the one who committed his life to God and Jesus, that God would look upon him and say, "You are my beloved, my only begotten son. I am one who solely looks at Mother Moon and believes that God is smiling upon her and saying, my only begotten daughter, lead my people. So she is the woman in charge at this time. And we feel just so blessed to have been chosen at this time in history to be a part of what we are moving in and what is stated to be a Kairos moment for us, an opportunity to work with the one that God desires to have a great change come. I want to emphasize her today for all of us and those who really know her and those who may not. I encourage you to even know her more. She saw in June of 2021 the need to ask those of us who's close to the work of Father and Mother Moon on earth at this time to end violent crime. Wow, what a prophetic voice that one would have among us to say it is beyond time and you must work faithfully. You must support one another in the task. You must pray, repent from where you are, and revive America again because America is a part of the creation that belongs to the author and finisher of our faith and the owner of the universe, God. Through the centuries of time, human beings have been involved in situations that they ought not be since the fall. And many of us, if not all of us on this call, understand from a philosophical and a theological point of view why that is. But the practical nature of what is going on before us now calls for us to look at human behavior and what we can do with the emotional situations that are confronting the people of God on earth at this time. And let us look most specifically today at America. While not forgetting that Ukraine, what is happening there needs to stop. What is happening in Mali and other parts of Africa needs to stop. And it can go on in every continent. And as a matter of fact, we will be through the World Christian Leadership Conference addressing the things that are on every continent. But as some people love to remind us, we're talking about us now when we look at the situation in America. And we must begin to start at home. We can remember 2019, not too far away in our distant past, though we don't want to be stuck there. I want to remind us of what we said there. We said, peace starts with me. As we address the violence in ending violent crime, some people would say that we are trying to create a utopia. And while they say that in a way to say it's a fantasy and it can't be done. However, I used to think that it was a fantasy to think that I could score a touchdown on the football field until I did. But I worked hard to be able to do that. We need to work diligently and faithfully towards that which is a fantasy to us until it becomes a reality. And when you talk about it being a utopia, and I see that as an aim, and you're talking about in a utopic situation, perfecting what it is to become perfect, I think we ought to have a more perfect union, don't you? And if we are to have that more perfect union, then we've got to come together and work as a team, just like that football team that I scored the touchdown with. It would have been a fantasy if I was just trying to take on the opposition by myself. But because I was working with a team, I was able to make a catch and make way into the end zone by the grace of God and achieve my destination. We, as the American people, must revive ourselves once again, first and foremost, to be in alignment with God's will, and then to build upon the right relationship with God and the right relationship that we need to have with all human beings. Now, all of that sounds very preachy in a way. I understand that. But remember, I am a preacher, but I'm a preacher with a sound mind and a specific goal for us. Those of us who are part of the American Clergy Leadership Conference, as well as those who are working in sync with us and partnership with us through UPF. It was with Dr. Michael Jenkins that when we were in Los Angeles, and one of the popular rappers in the United States of America, Nipsey Hussle, was murdered. We were praying, of course. We were listening, of course. But then we were spirit-led. Dr. Jenkins and I called upon certain members, leaders, executives of the American Clergy Leadership Conference to go with us and unite with Chaplain Bishop Durham and go to the chief of one of the divisions of the LAPD. And there we began to formulate the first American Clergy Leadership Conference and PD in the United States of America partnership. We wanted that partnership then and desire to keep it going now, to be one that would spread throughout the nation, to be a model of how to work together in backing the blue. And when we speak of backing the blue, we're not just talking about making sure that financially they're able to operate. We're talking about the ideal of what law enforcement is to be and represent within a nation that is moving to be a more perfect democracy, where people are free to be in accordance with that which is within law and order, but also that which seeks the betterment of conditions for people to be safe and secure, for people to have the right of liberty to the pursuit of happiness as they live this life that God has given in the time in which God has allowed it to be. How can we best do that? In a society where we have social stratification, there will always be challenges. When we add on that stratification, race divisions, and we call it racial stratification, there will always be challenges. For it is by human nature that we gravitate to that which allows us to feel safe and secure, that which we are most familiar with. And that too starts at a personal place. It starts within our family. A key situation that should not only be in our heads or in our minds, but should also be in our hearts, that gravitates towards us being not only fair to ourselves and those around us within our home, but it extends externally outside of our homes. We must not be afraid, therefore, to speak the language of love. I want to say that again, but in a more practical way. We must not be afraid to be sympathetic and empathetic with what is happening within America, our nation. People are struggling. People are challenged. People are dying, but people are being murdered. And while this is happening, those who are surviving, they're needing our love. Yes, it is true that we should do things in a loving way to try to make prevention. But when the crisis has hit, as it has hit in so many places of America right now, we must recognize that we must help those who are surviving to be in a place of healing. Let us not forget that, to reach out to our neighbors. And in the neighborhoods where these things have occurred recently, with so many people being killed in grocery stores, in churches and older children and teachers in schools. We must begin to pray and come off of our knees and do the work that is necessary to help them in their process of healing. And then we will find that as we do the healing work through being there, being willing to talk, or as Reverend Humphrey, a member of the American Clergy Leadership Conference in New Mexico, says about reaching out across Texas now and helping people, each one adopting someone or some family to help them through this process. Why? Because we care. And show them the means of caring, which is not so much to talk about it, but to listen to it. Allow them to talk. Allow them to cry. Allow them to go through the process of time. And in time, then the safe touch can return to them and help them in their healing process. But while we're doing that, we do need to take time and take serious what we're doing here today. Coming together to say we're going to work faithfully hand in hand for prevention, intervention, and working towards whatever means it takes to be on a path of stopping the violence and stopping the crime in America. I wanted to say stop the violence first for this reason. It is easy for us to look at crime and think of crime in the violent sense and to say with that immediately homicide or the advance that one takes towards somebody else. But as I was talking to Reverend Oliver earlier, and he pointed out that there's a new wave that's rising in America. And some have written recently about how it has been a mysterious rise. But as Reverend Oliver indicated, since I've been in the practice of psychotherapy since the mid 80s, I've seen it take its turn here and there. It has affected us in the various walks of society. It has affected us even among clergy. When I was serving as a chaplain in the United States military, among our Marines in the 80s, it just boomed. It shocked us all that Marines were killing themselves. Yes, I'm talking about suicide. And we developed specific programs within the Navy community, both with the Marines, with the blue side, as we called it there. So you can say I've been back in the blue for a long time. But also with the Coast Guard and also with those who are doing Navy, Air Force. That total armed forces, we saw people, persons, fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, friends, neighbors who were taking their own lives. Well, it's happening again, but not just in the military community, but in the civilian area of life. So we all need to think about this and become fully equipped in the way in which we can come and be with one another. Not just, I want to emphasize this, not just in our ways of teaching the ideal, but really being able to live, just live with those who are struggling in such a way. And what are the signs that we pick up? And many times as neighbors and friends, we're the first ones to see the signs, but we may not recognize them. Myrtle was a beautiful girl that I actually went to college with. And when I was in college with Myrtle, she was dating a gentleman who was going towards being a military guy. He's in ROTC, doing very well. And in fact, he became a military officer. She was deeply in love with him, and it seemed that he was deeply in love with her. They had one child together. But as time went by, and it wasn't a long time, a very brief time, I'd gone off to Atlanta, Georgia. They were still in South Carolina. He was at Fort Jackson in Columbia, where I had spent about 6 years growing up with my parents, in fact. But I did not meet him nor Myrtle, and I won't give his name because he's yet alive. But Myrtle is not. Myrtle committed suicide. What hurt me about Myrtle's suicidal situation was not that she was that close to me, because she wasn't in college. We didn't date or anything of that nature. I never even thought about it. But she was one who came to me for help. When I became a pastor in the town in which she had returned to live after she had separated from our fellow college mate, and she was struggling because he made more money than she did as a teacher. He would be able to take the only one treasure she had, that she thought she had in life, their son. At that time, I had been through clinical training and I picked up some things with Myrtle. So I had Myrtle coming to talk to me on a weekly basis. But at that time, I did not know where to land Myrtle during the times when I would be away. And vacation did come. And while I was away for 3 weeks, Myrtle committed suicide. What could I have done differently? I often thought about that. I couldn't do anything different with her faith, for she was going to a church every week. I couldn't do anything different as a clinical clinician because she was seeing me every week. But I could have done something different as a friend. I could have made sure there were other friends surrounding her. Many people committing suicide because they feel they don't have any friends around them in critical times. We need each other. Everybody needs a friend who can be the one to ask, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? See, sometimes people are obsessed with situations. They can be hysterical and they can act like they're going that way, but they can't tell you the fullness of the story. But when you're really talking as a friend, you listen to the fullness of the story. And when persons can describe to you what they are thinking of doing or about to do, whether it's towards suicide or homicide, listen to the story. Stories are important. Not just the specifics of the word, but the specifics of the scenario that they lay before us. We must play it out all together. And when they can give you situations almost close to the day and time, that's when we need the intervention to bring in other professionals along with us. Here's one key thing that I also gathered later after working with Myrtle. Always have at least one other professional that's a part of who we are together. And by professional, what I mean is not so many degrees on the walls or even how many years they have worked the process, but what I mean by professional in this, one who's able also to make a profession to those who are going through the struggle. Like I'm professing to you today. It's hard on me too. What we see happening in our nation right now, it should be difficult for us because we are human. But more than that, when we are in the right sight with God, and let me come back to being a preacher for a moment with you today. We must also be a professional who makes our profession before God. We can't just pick anybody, and that's why I said don't go by the degrees on the wall, but the degree of love that's in the heart. Leave them with people who have that same compassionate nature that will not take advantage of people in their weakness, but help return them to their strength. The Bible ends in a real interesting way. Have you paid attention to lately? I know all of you have probably read the Bible before, but have you paid attention lately to the way the Bible ends with Revelations, the 22nd chapter? I just want to share with you a portion of that to have this in your mind as I give you my concluding words today about things that are practical that we should do. It says, now, starting at the 18th verse, now I bear witness to everyone who hear the words of the prophecy contained in this scroll. If anyone adds to them, God will add to that person the plagues that are written in this scroll. If anyone takes away from them the words of the scroll of prophecy, God will take away that person's share in the tree of life and the holy city, which are described in this scroll. The one who bears witness to these things says, yes, I am coming soon. Amen. And it concludes at verse 21, come Lord Jesus, the grace of the Lord Jesus be with all. So, what does that mean for us? Be a witness. A witness to what creation is to be. I used to say it's supposed to be, but now I say is to be. What's the difference? Supposed to be carries a little hope maybe, but also it carries that kind of a negative thing, but it can't be. Supposed to be, hopefully, but it can't be. But is to be says, not only do I hope, but I'm a witness to the making thereof. My offering to us today in this program that we give great thanks to UPF for organizing and bringing forth in support of ACLC is that we become witnesses, that we witness all of the efforts and the steps that we are taking in our partnership with those of the blue and the other colors that law enforcement officers may wear, and also those who may wear red or blue in the gangs on the street. But most of all, for the shades of color that's on every person that exists in the United States of America. Because despite the racial stratification, we all bleed red when our blood hits the air. We all are human beings created by the same God. So let us witness to a practical love that says we are taking the right steps in building and creating the beloved community, the community that seeks economic interdependence. That means for all of us from our different walks of life involved in the economic makings and workings of the United States of America, no matter what nation we're dealing with, or state that we're dealing with, or even the community businesses that we're dealing with. We're seeking to have everybody in the state of being okay economically. And when we talk about the poor will always be with us, we're not talking about those who are existing right before our eyes as if to let them be there. We help them. What we mean is every generation has to deal with it again and again. It is not just a one generation cure all situation. but it's to set up means and ways by which we can all be on this path towards a beautiful world that lasts for all of the coming generations behind us. It's time for us to get it right. And I say we can. We can do it not only by being spiritually there, but physically there. Reach out to another person and bring them into the fold for us to have a mutual prosperity and for us to live out the values that we teach. When we teach true family values, let us live them. Let us teach the four positional foundation of love. Let us live it. Let us live it most importantly, right now in the United States of America. For when we do it right, we help with all people of the world. Some of you may have been with us recently when Dr. Irvin Waller spoke to us. Dr. Oliver and I spent time together near the end of 2019 with him in a meeting that UPF put together in San Francisco, and they were gracious to invite me there then. We talk about the prophetic voice of Mother Moon and the prophetic work of UPF, AC, LC, all of us working together. But the prophecy, not a prophetic work, will mean anything if we carry a division and a divide among us. So my last asking of you today, as we seek to bring an end to violent crime, is to let the partnership start and be maintained with us. Let's continue to work together. Let's continue to bring forth the ideals and the ideas and the energies that will bring forth a cooperative peace and an end to violence and crime. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rouse. Let's give him a round of that. Was a profound message. Very profound message. You know, I really appreciate, and I think you led off, as we will invite Dr. Jenkins in 1 minute. You led off with the right ideal. Here? Yeah, you led off with the ideal. And that is, I thought about Nipsey Hussle. I walked in this place about a couple months, 5 months ago, 6 months, 7 months ago. And a young man, he resembled Nipsey Hussle. And I said, you know, you resemble that guy who was killed. He said, you mean Nipsey Hussle? And he said, I said, yeah. He said, yeah, not only I resemble him, but I admire him. And so I looked at it and said, well, young man, why do you admire him? Because of the platform that Nipsey stood on. He was ready to make some positive changes in the mindset of his community, in the Black community, really positive changes. So that, to me, goes back to what you were saying. When I was in college, Dr. Rouse, I was taking Psychology 101. And for some reason, to this day, I can remember this phrase of the definition of the norm. It stuck with me to this day. It says norms is defined as what is prevailing. And see, what we are dealing with right now in crime and violence, and all of those, is the prevailing symptom. But as you said, that God said that all healing can come. So my always rallying call is, what is the alternative voice? It's not loud enough to begin to subliminally and overtly begin to change those people who are at risk to commit crime, to stop them. So when I listened to that young man, I realized there was an inkling of a solution there. There was an inkling of some prevention there, but that voice is not loud enough to touch many of those who are at risk. So I really appreciate although you share with us what's going on, but you also were sharing with us some prevention. And also, as I always say, I always tell my people, Satan is a liar, a thief, and a master intimidator, and his mission is to make us think that nothing can change. It will always be this way, right? Then if that is so, then there's no God. So what is that alternative voice that we need to resonate and become stronger than that other voice that is prevailing? So I really thank you very much for, you came out of the gate, you had me mesmerized. Thank you very much. It was really nice. Now I would like to invite our other great leader, Dr. Michael Jenkins, to come on and share with us a few words. He is also the president of ACLC, and that same commission came from ACLC, from Mother Moon to Dr. Jenkins recently deal with the violent crime in American gun control. So we're happy to have you on, Dr. Jenkins. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Oliver. Thank you, Dr. Rouse, for a beautiful overview and deep-minded understanding of how we need to come together and address this evil of violence and crime. And as Reverend Oliver said, God is really capable to work to change the hearts of men and women. And therefore, we must turn to God. So we're launching this UPF ACLC cooperative every Wednesday. From now on, we want to have a conversation and also take action together. We want to discover the people in this country that really are contributing to make a better community and how we might help them, and also how we might understand why the violence seems so pervasive right now. And therefore, Dr. Rouse initiated a few years ago outreach to the police and law enforcement throughout America. He made a memorandum of understanding with the New York AAU, where the police engage young people in sports. He did the same thing in LA. And then Dr. Rouse and I met the deputy chief of the LAPD. And that was very, very hopeful. We've engaged them and we've continued also with the bishop there. And what we found was police really need support. Yes, there are some police that have done wrong and there are some serious problems, but it's a very small percentage. If you look at the statistics, it's really a small percentage of the problem. The bigger problem is our communities need help and the police need help too. And we've got to bring the two together. There's a gap between communities and police we're finding from them. So to bring them together, our churches and the ACLC churches and other churches play a critical role. Last 2 weeks ago on Tuesday, we were in Chicago. And the deputy chief of the Chicago Police Department said, I never had a situation where a pastor wasn't supportive and helpful. But he really shared with us that churches can make a huge difference because the police are isolated and most of the people in the communities only see the police when there's an emergency, when there's a crisis, when there's violent crime going on. So there's a tremendous tension and fear of the police. So I wanted to share a few things about that. Dr. Rouse and I have been working on it, and then he started a program called Safe Cities. And we really want to get behind that. We're doing a partnership with ACLC, and ACLC is doing a lot more on its own, but we want to help each other. Also, our very good Dr. Rouse, our sub-regional executive director in California, Nasser Zamarad, has had a tremendous breakthrough with LAPD. They saw that he was doing interfaith programs. And suddenly he got the call from the LAPD, one of the deputy chiefs, if we could do a program for them. So we had a couple programs online. Well, this developed further and further. Now they're calling our representative every month to organize programs. And then on July 20th, the chief of the LAPD is coming to Pasadena to our headquarters there. And they want to do an official program. And we'd like to invite Dr. Rouse for that, physically to be there in Los Angeles on Wednesday, July 20th. The chief of LAPD is coming, and they have agreed. They sent 2 deputies out last week to check this out, and they want to make that the interfaith headquarters of the LAPD, because they found that there's so many diverse communities in LAPD that interfaith involvement of religious leaders tremendously opens doors for that warm relationship between the police and the community. And then other things that went on, as Dr. Rouse mentioned, UPF, and we invited Dr. Rouse to San Francisco. We had a program on spirituality and criminal justice. And in that program, we were really studying what is the role of faith leaders. But what the Chicago Deputy Chief Coffey told us is that churches, and the LAPD Deputy Chief also, Cato, told us we need our officers to be in situations with the community where it's not an emergency, where they're helping pass out toys at Christmas, or where they're helping meet people at a Sunday cookout after church or something like that. And so our churches started inviting the police department to come in. It's really, really important. Then with Bishop Rosario, we met Chief Monahan, who was the chief of the NYPD. This was at the peak of the terrible tragedy of the riots of in relation to the terrible killing of George Floyd. But New York was going crazy in July of 2020. July, August, September, October, it was going crazy. I mean, it was really riots on the streets. And Chief Monahan was there. We had a program with him, and he shared with us, because the mayor at that time decided to cut the budget because the defund the police idea gave people some kind of hope that that was going to fix things. But he said, defunding the police, all that did was, when the mayor did that in New York, is that cuts out community policing. That completely, the first budget to go is community policing. They cannot take away the officers with their two-way radios that respond to a violent crime in action. So they take off the community police, but the community police is the number one thing. Most important, in every police department will tell you, community policing has a huge impact on reducing crime. And I think we want to start studying with Dr. Rouse and with our UPF team and all of our associates out there, and the ACLC Clergy are so powerful. So I'd like to share a couple of things that Reverend Oliver and I have discovered just from taking a look at this, because we feel like there's so much to learn and we want to take action, but we want to do it intelligently. So when we look at the situation in New York, we find that a lot of things that we've understood are not actually factual. I mean, the image of New York right now is that crime is skyrocketing, murder is skyrocketing, things are out of control. It's the worst time in history. False, absolutely false. Here's a Reuters article from April 13, 2022. Despite recent uptick, New York City crime is down from past decades. And I want to show you this chart that we found. This is from NYPD under Mayor Eric Adams. This is a shocking chart of the facts. The facts is what we need to understand and how to resolve the crime. But look at this, 1990, there were 2,262 gun murders in New York City. 2021, there was 488. That's unbelievable, unbelievable. Look at the decline. It's like a 78.4% decline in murder. The decline in rape was minus 52%. This one really shocked me, Dr. Rouse, because you think that they're looting, people are told they can take anything under $500, the police won't do anything. And look what the statistics are. That's false. That's false. 100,000 robberies in 1990. Then 2021, 13,000. It's an enormous decline. Most of that's from involvement of churches, community policing, better training for police. But I'll tell you, the deputy chief in Chicago told us last week that, you know, an officer has less than 2 seconds to make a decision whether to use his firearm if somebody's shooting or if somebody's immediately about to kill somebody. 2 seconds. And he said some of those decisions were made on the spot. Some were very bad, some were very good. But he said sometimes those very decisions are examined in the courts and it takes 4 or 5 years to decide whether the action the officer took was correct or not. Like right now, we see in Uvalde the tragedy of these young people and the tragedy of the situation where the police couldn't respond as well as it should have. We don't want to point fingers because we got to get the facts. But I'd like ACLC and UPF to become the leading experts on gun deaths in America and how to reduce it. Here's another statistic that was shocking. When we look at the gun deaths in America, in 2020, 54% of all gun-related deaths were suicides. So that's related with mental illness. 43% were murders, according to the CDC. The remaining gun deaths were unintentional. Deaths by law enforcement was 611. 611, that's far too many deaths. However, the image that's being put out there is the Black community is suffering the most death at the hands of law enforcement. That's completely false. I'm shocked when I saw these numbers. And we've got to look at it more carefully. But how are we going to look at it? We got to look at it intelligently. We got to look at it with care. So I want to share one more thing here that we discovered with Dr. Rausen. And that was that program we had in San Francisco. Criminality and Spiritual Justice. Dr. Walsh mentioned this book. Like everybody, if you can get this book, it's on Amazon. Science and Secrets of Ending Violent Crime. Erwin Waller is a professor and an expert on the study of crime and what has reduced crime, not only in many countries of the world, but also in America. So what was really interesting about his book, Science and Secrets of Ending Violent Crime, there are a lot of things that have been done that really do end violent crime. So first we have to understand the situation of violent crime and the science of effective solutions. He does a very deep study on violence prevention. Violence prevention is not done enough. Most of the killings right now in the major cities like Chicago and New York are coming from 15 to 19-year-old boys. So that community has to be really looked at, and how are we going to get those boys to have a different lifestyle? And it's rough because the breakdown of the family is critical. But violence prevention is the #1 thing that can reduce crime. But there's very little put into that. But when it is, it really works. Smarter use of police and prison. We got a lot of statistics here on this. It's fascinating. One thing that shocked me when I read the book was actually prisons. We got to imprison people that are really a threat to society. But in fact, prisons and the increase in prison population does not reduce crime. It doesn't reduce crime. Now, it may stop crime from skyrocketing more, but prisons aren't the answer because it doesn't rehabilitate people. It doesn't restore people. That's why we need this new kind of thinking. And also helping youth to flourish upstream before they get taken over by the violence in the streets or the opportunities that are there with people that are doing the wrong thing with drugs. So that's why when we look at this, he found that, you know, getting the community to buy in, there are techniques that really work. And getting the city to buy in and not letting narratives take over, like most death is coming from the police, or most violent crime is occurring, you know, from just by the fact that everybody and their brother has a gun. It's more than that, the death and the destruction. Yes, I don't think we should have guns so easily available to everybody. But the city with the highest and the most strict gun laws in the United States is Chicago, Illinois. And every weekend there's sometimes 200 or more shootings. And most of those guns are illegal. They're illegal guns. They're, not saying we shouldn't have tighter control. We should, we must. But that is not reducing the gun death in Chicago. It's not working. The people that are having the problem in this area are people that really need help. And we've got to catch them before it's too late. So I want to commend Dr. Rouse, the ACLC, for having the vision to take this on before anybody even really thought that ACLC should do it. And now, as Dr. Rouse said, our founder, Mother Moon, definitely wants us to take steps as people of faith, as people of interfaith communities, as people who are responsible. We got to deal with the families. Got to deal with the family situation. That's a number one area that is most needed, the family situation. Dr. Rouse and I work with a former gang member in Chicago. His name's T. Cooks. I've been with him many times. He's really a good man. He's getting young people into sports. They took over a basketball court that was just grown over and defunct, and the city supported it. And he has a basketball league now. He's saving hundreds and hundreds of lives by getting these young people into sport because they need to be involved. They need mentors. If they don't have a father at home, they need a big brother or a big sister. They need help. They need help. And that's why the churches can come in and do a lot. But we need to systematize it even more. We got to be careful of the hate that's promoted by people who really don't have the facts. People want to superimpose an agenda on everybody, how we're going to solve everything. And then they make new laws, and then they go off and forget about Uvalde, Texas after a while. I mean, we all have that nature. Once the crisis is over, we start to forget. Right now, we're hot. We've got to move right now to address family situation, youth situation, then the availability of guns, and then also mental illness. Dr. Rouse is a counselor. This is one of the number one causes. Look at suicide is the highest gun death in America. Suicide. Yes, so those guns shouldn't be available to those people. Shouldn't be laying around the house. So that's why we've got a lot of work to do. But I feel hope because I feel like what we did also with the Chicago police showed me how much, and the police are critical. We can't ignore the police. They're critical to the process. But at the same time, they're not the only answer to the problem, but they need help. That's why when we went to Chicago, I was shocked at how much they appreciated our being there at the Fraternal Order of Police. This is a this is the commander of 11 units of the Chicago PD, Commander Chung. The lady on the left is an alderwoman for 16 years in the most violent district of Chicago, Ward 16, Englewood District. The woman in the white there on the right is Dr. Rita Pritchett, and she is the person that organized this program. She was 35 years as a Chicago police officer, and she's a pastor. It was a beautiful experience. And there's the deputy chief of Chicago PD. You notice here on the wall, these are all officers who died in the line of duty. And this officer right here, Mike Mette, is a vice president of FOP, but he really educated us because we began to understand, wow, what our police are going through right now. They're afraid. They can't get enough police in Chicago because the climate in the community became anti-police. The police are the problem. The police aren't the problem. They have problems, and we can solve those problems, but the police are not the problem. And therefore, I'd like to just end with this. I'm so grateful. ACLC organized this program in Chicago. These are all police officers right here, and they've done so much in the community. So I think that because of the rejection of police, defund the police, marched down the street of New York City on Fifth Avenue. I saw it, where the people who were marching said, pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. Godly people cannot allow that kind of false and hateful rhetoric to be spread around. I'll never forget, after I saw that march in New York City, 3 days later, a guy who was a criminal, came up from Baltimore, went into Brooklyn with a gun. Two officers were sitting there in their patrol car. He walked right up to him. The window was down in Brooklyn and shot the Asian police officer in the head, killed him right there. And he said that pigs in a blanket fry them like bacon. We can't let that kind of evil thinking go out. We can't let that kind of evil go out to our community. So that's why we're working on this. But it's, it's not simple. But you got an older woman like Shirley Coleman, and her daughter has now just took over her place for older women. And they've been really, really excellent at giving community programs and developing and working together with the police. So I'll tell you, the police, they really can receive us and the honor. And that was a police choir that came from the Chicago Police Department. And Pastor Barrett there with Dr. Pritchett. And there's the fallen officers. That's really sad. These guys are family people. And that's why the person that was talking to us from FOP was talking about the fact that there's so much stress because of lack of the support and the accusation that the police are the cause of the problem. These people all have families. They do their police work like a job. They go 9 to 5. But now that there's not enough police, everybody's got to do overtime. Finally, they have no time for their family. So it was really, really shocking what we learned there. I'll tell you, every city would love it if ACLC would show up and want to do a program, and then even do something to respect them and to honor them and hear them and share with them what we can possibly do. And the women in ministry did an incredible job with these women clergy, like Alderwoman Coleman's a pastor. And so honoring these officers, I can't tell you, this officer right here was a person that saved the partner of one woman police officer that was gunned down when she did a traffic stop. Her partner was being shot. He pulled up in his squad car and saved one of them. I'll tell you, giving him this simple honor from ACLC, he was very moved, deeply moved, but about a half hour later, he's standing there and I came to him and I just said, we wanted to thank you for risking your life to protect us. And he got tears in his eyes. So I'll tell you, they're doing a prayer call for the police now throughout the country, ACLC is. So I just wanted to share that with you. I want to thank you, Reverend Oliver. I think our time's well spent. This program will continue every week. Dr. Rouse, we really lead us on. I want to thank you, Dr. Oliver. I've asked you to, continue to guide us on how we can find the experts. And all of you have experts in your city. We're wide open. We don't have the answers yet, but I do believe that we will find the answers and be able to implement them if we work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins, for your presentation and those facts. As we go down the route, we can put Dr. Luan Rouse back on. Thank you, Doctor, as well.
Dr. Oliver, I'm going to have to say goodbye.
Okay.
So thank you. Thank you, Dr.
All right,
Rouse.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much to everybody. God bless you. We'll be back Wednesday. Thank you.
Yeah. So, as we conclude, I want to thank Dr. Jenkins as he left for his stats. But as we look, Dr. Rouse, there are so many angles to this violence and gun violence and crime in America and the root causes of it. There's always one root cause, of course. We severed our relationship with God, and we've been trying to work that thing out ever since, but it's morphed into different areas, that has led to crime, led to people's inability to be sensitive to others, So as we go on, I think those are some of the puzzles that we have to piece together during this time. So really grateful. Thank you for your profound presentation. And I think indelible within your presentation was some semblances of the answers, preventions, solutions. How do we begin to build upon some of those things? And I'm quite sure we'll have some other speakers who will come on to engage and also add on to some of that and embellish upon those as well. So again, you are outstanding. Let's give Dr. Rouse another applaud. He was excellent. Yeah. Second to none, my brother. Also, next week, we will have our guest speaker also will be Dr. Little. Dr. Mark Little is a pastor. He's also a lawyer. And also he's a chairman of CURE, which is the Center for Urban Renewal and Education. And he would also address us on this issue, crime in America and the violence that needs to cease, if you will. But how do we begin to do that? And I think that we need what Dr. Jenkins was saying, resonating voices. The voice is not strong enough, you see. So we believe one thing, right, Dr. Yard? Every human being was created by God.
That's right.
So in them is some little seed somewhere that can embrace peace.
Amen.
Amen. So we want to thank everyone for coming again to this program, our weekly Stopping the Violence and Crime in America, and we will see you next week. Again, Dr. Rouse, thank you. Unless you have any other words you'd like to say in conclusion.
I want to just thank each one of you. And I believe, I want to end with this. I love to bring to the cognition of people. America has an ideal community organized in our military. It's interesting. And even as an organization within our law enforcement. I mean, think about that for a moment. We call upon these people to be very professional, to have a real tight community. But then we're loose as a community apart from them. But often they lack one thing to keep them from being in perfection. That's a total relationship with God. And on the other hand, as loose as we are as a community, our Savior is in our relation with God. If we can take from both of these and come together as this one faith community Marie and I applaud today. You can call it unification community. You can call it by any name you want to. You can name it after Father Mother Moon, trying to be derogatory. But by any name you call it, it is the one faith community calling all of us to love one another. Let's help people to learn that true love. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rouse. I want to put my email in the box. I don't think, did everyone get it? Okay, everyone. So my email, I saw some people in the chat say a few things. Send me an email if you're interested in sharing or have someone who is working in this area that would like to come on our webinar. So look at my email. Thank you so much. Very much, Dr. Rouse, for your and also accentuating the fact by God's divine hand, America has always been poised and positioned to be a catalyst for peace because all of God's children are few. But how do we make it happen? It's up to us. And I'm grateful that you brought that up as well. Everyone, thank you very much for coming on. We love you. Want to see you next week. Please invite someone. And again, my email is in the chat if you have someone that you would like to speak or contribute to this process.
2021.
God bless you and see you next week.
What about 2022?
Do you need 2020?
Thank you, Reverend Oliver.
Yes.
No.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Leslie, Bill.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you,
everybody.
Reverend
God
Oliver,
bless
Dr.
us one
Rouse.
and all. They're
Yes, sir.
Oliver. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Rouse. Beautiful testimony. Good heart.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bill Stoner, thank you for letting me be here. Send me the email, otherwise I couldn't get in.
Thank you. Actually, we're so really happy. So many people showed up. It was kind of like the last second we get it out. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bismarck, Reverend Bismarck Banfo, thank you.
Yeah,
God
thank
bless
you,
you.
Brother Oliver,
Yes,
for
sir.
your hard work.
Very
Very nice.
God bless us.